All right, thanks, Ellen. It is time for my final thought. This weekend, Michigan Republican Representative Justin Amash said that he thinks President Donald Trump's conduct in office is impeachable and that Attorney General William Barr intentionally misled the public about the conclusions in Special Counsel Robert Mueller's report. He also said that his Republican colleagues in Congress are turning a blind eye to it all. Now, he tweeted, quote, "Contrary to Barr's portrayal, Mueller's report reveals that President Trump engaged in specific actions and a pattern of behavior that meet the threshold for impeachment." Now, Amash is the first Republican to openly say that President Trump's conduct is impeachable. It's further provoking that he's a member of the House Oversight Committee, which is the main watchdog for the executive branch of government. Now, let's turn the clock back to 2016. The Republican establishment was so opposed to the idea of Donald Trump as president, they considered colluding with each other to prevent him from getting the necessary votes for the party's nomination. Now, 3 years later, they've all seemingly been magically convinced of Trump's strength of character and leadership. Either that or they have no qualms about setting their principles aside to play political games. Now, whether you think the president should be impeached or not, I applaud Justin Amash for standing on principles instead of partisanship, increasingly rare in today's political climate. I find it hard to believe that he's the only Republican to take issue with the Mueller report's findings. Conversely, I don't think every Democrat feels the same way about how to move forward. Don't believe me? Just look at the field for the 2020 nomination. It's bigger than the Jacksons. Unfortunately, so far, Amash is the only one with enough conviction to say so out loud. Let's hope he isn't the last. We're going to continue this conversation online. You guys have a beautiful Monday. We got a Game of Thrones Facebook Live coming at about 7:15. That's going to be Marley and Jake and Gio. My girl Heather Case is going to be on the spot. Have a beautiful Monday. Get up, DC.